Welcome back to my channel. It's your girl, Sister Girl on Films, and I am coming back with my recap and review of LoveCraft Country Season 1, Episode 3. Y'all, before the rest of the video continues, you will see a change in quality after my intro because my first intro did not record and I had to re-record it. Sorry for the interruption, guys, but I wanted to give you a heads up first. Enjoy. Y'all, your girl is staying consistent and I could not be more proud of myself because of that. So the title of this episode is Holy Ghost, and y'all, I love this episode. I had to take notes because there was a lot of information in this episode and I did not want to miss anything that I needed to say about it. And not that my last reviews have been raggedy, but I have been missing some stuff. So I wanted to make sure I did not miss anything for you guys this time. This episode, like I said, is entitled Holy Ghost. And the episode starts with Leti in a church, and someone is reading a letter that it seems like a letter that they wrote to Leti, or they're speaking to Leti. And it's really just encouraging Leti to let her wings fly and reevaluate her life almost, and the things she's done for others and what has she done for herself. Has she given 100% in this world that she's in right now? And it's really moving, and in slow motion, the people in the background, the church, they're catching the Holy Ghost. If you're familiar with the Black church or like Southern Baptist churches, you know what catching the Spirit or the Holy Ghost means. So that was happening. So I thought that was pretty cool that they tied that in with the title of the episode immediately. And so we get this, and so now we know, oh, this is going to be Leti's episode. The next scene is this black screen with some writing, and it is giving me American Horror Story vibes. Like, this entire episode gave me American Horror Stories, Horror House vibes. Let me know in the comments below if you felt the same way, because I immediately was like, this is like American Horror Story. And so the title, the screen, it basically says, in the summer of 1955, 10 Negroes move into a house on the north side of Chicago, and something else, and 3 people didn't make it out alive, and it said pioneering is dangerous. That's not what it said verbatim, but you know, y'all get it. And then so we like, oh shoot, which 3 characters about to die? That's the first thing I thought. Said we already got rid of Uncle George, which I still am hurt about. Now who's gonna die? What 3 characters are expendable at this point? So then the next scene is Leti, and she's excited because she just purchased a house, and she's with her sister Ruby, and her sister is looking around because the town is missing a lot of brown. You know what I'm saying? The area, the neighborhood is not colored folk friendly. So Ruby peeps that, and so Leti shows her the house, and then we get this shot of this horrifically dilapidated, just raggedy Victorian style home. And Leti is over the moon, honey. You would think this was like the Hefner, what's it called? The Playboy Mansion. She was so excited about it. And Ruby is like, girl, you bought this little dump? And Leti is like, girl, yes, like it has 3 floors, it has 13 bedrooms. Like, I plan to make it a boarding house for folks, colored folks that need, you know, help, who down on their luck. And Ruby is like, I guess. She's like, how you get the money for this? And Leti just kind of skates past it, like, girl, don't worry about all that. And so she's giving Ruby a tour of the house, and Ruby is still like, this is really raggedy. And I'm literally looking like, girl, this house looks haunted. Everything in this house says to me, this house is haunted. Don't move here. But Leti is not led astray at all. Leti is giving Ruby a tour of the house, and she's super excited, like I would be, about an elevator in the house. So they open up the elevator, and Leti tries to call it, and nothing happens. And she's like, ooh, okay, I don't know, it was working a little bit ago. And she sticks her head in, and all of a sudden the elevator comes down and almost knocks her head off. And so she's freaking out, and then she's like kind of laughing, like nervously laughing. And Ruby is like, that ain't funny. And so then they just kind of, you know, she closes the door on the elevator shaft and then it fades to black. And then so the next scene is Hippolyta. Hippolyta, have you ever heard a name like that? I just wanted to bring that up because I thought that name was very unique. So Hippolyta, we see that she is still grieving the loss of Uncle George, and she pulls out Dracula, which was Uncle George's favorite book. She pulls it out and she just kind of goes into a trance. She starts ripping off the pages of the book. And you know that it's not because she's angry with him. She's just really grieving his loss, as she should. They were really in love. And she's also upset because she feels like she's not, y'all want to have a bit in my hand. She feels like she's not being told everything about his death. Like what Tick and Montrose told her just ain't adding up to her. So she goes down to the kitchen and Tick has cooked breakfast, and they were receiving calls from the printer about the travel guide, and Tick took it upon himself to send her edits, even though he didn't talk to her about it first. And so she just really kind of feeling like Tick is just doing the most and he's kind of in the way. And Tick is picking up on that vibe, and he's like, you know, I think I'm gonna go ahead and, you know, take my stuff and leave. I think I'm just gonna, you know, I've been here a little bit too long. And Dee is, you know, she is like, well, why? You know, stay. And Hippolyta is like, bye, get the hell out. So then the next scene, Tick goes to visit his dad, Montrose. And so he gets to Montrose's apartment, and Montrose is on the floor, drunk, passed out, basically mumbling in his sleep. And so Tick grabs a glass of water, throws it in Montrose's face, and he's like, you know, that was one of my favorite stories that, you know, you and Uncle George told me. And the story, and he's referencing because Montrose is mumbling, and the things he was mumbling was the story that he and George told Tick as a little boy. And the story is actually what inspired that opening scene with Jackie Robinson coming to beat the monster over the head and save Tick, because Montrose and George were basically like in a riot, and they were surrounded by a group of white boys, and they were getting ready to attack them, and a stranger came out of nowhere with a bat and started busting heads. We some head busting. Sorry, busting folks upside the head, and saved them. And so I like that we got a throwback to that, and we got that reference point for that part in the first episode. And so what I really liked about this scene is, number one, Tick went over there to kind of, you know, tuck his tail and ask his father for support because he needed somewhere to stay. But then also he went over there to talk to his dad about, you know, should we be honest with Hippolyta, because we told her that Uncle George was shot by a sheriff, but that we know that's not what happened. And Montrose is pretty much like, look, we're not gonna tell her that wizards exist and this is what really happened to him. Like, we just not having that discussion. And Tick is like, well, if Uncle George was here, and he was like just pushing the issue that, like, you know, that's the right thing to do. And so at this moment, there was opera music playing in the background, and then all this tension was built, and then this train goes past next to the apartment. Everything is rattling, and Montrose slams his hands on the table, and Tick stands up and Montrose stands up, and they just are staring each other down. And I loved everything about that scene. I loved the tension that was built with the operatic music, with the train going by, everything rattling in the background. And then I just really felt like Montrose not only wanted to be insistent that Tick not really defy his orders, but also I feel like Montrose really felt a way, because Tick was going so hard to look at and hide and hold George at this higher level of like morality. And I can imagine that over time, you know, George slept with his wife, and George might have actually fathered a child with his wife. He ain't really fucking with George like that. So to have his son really like treat this man like a martyr, I think is what really pissed Montrose off. But that was just my take on it. So then the next scene is moving day at Leti's new house. And so this part was pretty cool because we got to see the house cleaned up, and it looks a little bit better. Still looks eerie as hell, but it looks a little bit better. And so Leti's going around taking pictures of everybody. And then so a guy walks in and he has a dog. And she's like, oh, what's your name? And the guy is like, oh, his name is Baldwin and my name is James. And I was like, James Baldwin? And then they walk past a room with Ruby in it. He said, oh, are you a novelist too? And Rudy, not Rudy, I keep calling her Rudy. Ruby kind of kicks the door closed. And I was like, that was a little Easter egg, little nod to James Baldwin. I'm not mad at it. And then there's a dancer there. I'm not quite sure who she's supposed to be, but I'm sure she's supposed to be some notable 50s, 60s famous dancer. So it could be a plethora of those folks. And then while they're moving in and everyone's getting all settled, Tick walks in, and him and Leti have not seen each other since Uncle George's funeral, which was 3 weeks prior. And so Tick lets Leti know that he's about to go back to Florida because he was supposed to have been back like a month ago. And she asked him to stay, and he was like, no, I think it's time. I think I've worn out my welcome at this point. So they hug, and we get another shot of that sexual tension between them. And then all of a sudden we hear a horn blowing outside the front door, and they like, what the hell? Y'all, these three little white boys from the neighborhood then put bricks in their own cars against the horn. So now the horn is consistently blaring outside of Leti's house. And so they sitting there looking like, we don't want y'all in our neighborhood. So Leti and all of the new tenants that have moved into our house and Tick come out to the front porch. And Ruby is like, oh, here we go. This is gonna be Trumbull Park all over again. And so Trumbull Park is a place in Chicago where back in, I think it was 1953, 1954, there was a race riot because a black family tried to integrate a white neighborhood. And so it was a whole situation. So Ruby is pretty much saying this is what's about to happen here now because we didn't integrate it into these folks' neighborhood. And so Tick is like, well, I guess I ain't going nowhere now. And then so the next scene is of Leti in her bedroom. And y'all, this scene was so freaking creepy, let me tell you. So Leti is sleeping, and then we see these hands that start pulling the sheets off of her while she sleeps. The hands ain't connected to her body. I'm gonna say that again. The hands are not connected to her body, but yet they are snatching covers off of her. So that freaked me out. And then as she's sleeping, we get this pan of like this scary ass looking ghost just peering over her at the side of the bed. Y'all, it gave me chills. And then it kind of lifts up, and then we see that its whole bottom jaw portion is just missing. And then the sheets finally snatch off of Leti, and she wakes up. And so she wakes up, the horns are still going off in the car. And I'm like, I get it, y'all trying to do this for Leti, but ain't it bothering everybody else in the neighborhood? I guess they can live with it, I don't know. So Leti slams the window, and she's pissed off because the horns are blaring, and she's like super hot. So she realizes that the boiler is not functioning properly. So she goes down to the basement, a creepy ass basement. See, this episode has hit on way too many things that freak me out in real life. Sleeping and feeling like somebody watching you, that creeps me out. I hate it. Going in a creepy, I hate basements, y'all. I hate basements. When I was buying my house, I was very much aware I do not want a basement. I don't care about storage. I don't want a basement. And they had a creepy basement in this episode. So Leti goes into the basement, and the boiler looks like the knob is like thrown across away from the broiler. And so she feels like somebody sabotaged it. So she has to manually fix it. So she fixed the broiler, and then she hears like this rattling noise. And I'm like, girl, don't go towards the noise. Black people, we just don't do that. Not that black person. She goes, gets her flashlight looking for the noise. She finds it, and instead of being like, oh, hell no, turns around. I'm thinking she's going to pan down, and it's going to be like the dog out in the basement or something. No, they didn't play with us at all. She looked down, and then there's like a latch to another hidden room underneath the basement. And so the door is like moving, boom, 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 boom. And like she hears like these creepy voices. And then all of a sudden, like it's like, ah, and she like takes out running. Smart. And I'm thinking, oh, next scene is gonna be her moving out the house. No, Next scene is her and Tick, just the two of them, going back down to the basement. So they go down to this room, the secret room, and I'm like, girl, you just experienced all this, and you just gonna go down in this scary ass room, just you and him, with a baseball bat. Okay. So they go down in there, and they're like, well, there's nothing down here. And she's like, I heard something. There is something that was down here. And so Tick is like, well, this looks like a great place for a dark room. And I'm like, a dark room? No. Like, I'm not even gonna consider that. Like, we just heard the bumpity bump bump bump, and I just saw some shit with my eyes. I'm not then gonna turn around and use this as a place that's supposed to be intentionally dark just so I can develop some photos. Please. So while they're in the basement, they're talking, and they have a conversation about some stuff, and then they get a little close, and Leti grabs Tick's hand, and he kind of like awkwardly moves his hand away, and she's just kind of like, damn, what did I do? My breath stank? And yeah, and that's kind of it. Not a whole lot happening in this scene. So the next scene is the housewarming party that Leti has at her house. Now, mind you, she done bought this house in this white neighborhood where they don't want black folks. Yet she done invited every black person she know from the south side of Chicago to this house. I said, girl, you want some drama to get started. And I like it. So she's walking around the party being the best hostess ever. I'm like, Leti, can I be invited to one of your parties? Because they like to having a good time. Her sister is singing. They got a band playing. Everybody's dancing. Some broads is gossiping about Martin Luther King Jr. Yes, they reference MLK in this, talking about they heard that he was married. He trying to lead the movement, but he dated with some white woman. And then the one girl was like, no, I heard they made him marry some light-skinned colored girl instead. And I'm like, oh, don't be gossiping about MLK. But is it true? So then Leti goes into the kitchen, and Hippolyta goes into the kitchen with her, and they're just talking. And Hippolyta's kind of venting about how she was kind of frustrated with Tick because he was just he's trying to help, but he kind of overstayed his welcome, and she just really wasn't feeling his presence. And I think it's really because she felt like he lied to her, and she just wasn't feeling it. And so she asked, well, have you seen the kids? And so then we cut to the scene in the basement again. The damn basement, and the kids is down there playing with a Ouija board. What little black kids is playing with a Ouija board? I was a black kid that played with Ouija boards, so let me not even judge. Anyway, so the kids are down there. Dee is down there too, playing with a Ouija board. And so here's another Easter egg that I didn't catch at first until one of my friends talked about it on Facebook, and then I watched it again and I caught it. So they're playing with the Ouija board, and so they're like, Bobo, ask it a question, you're next. And I was like, Bobo? And I kind of peeped the outfit that the little boy had on, and his question was, am I gonna have fun on my trip? And then the Ouija board aggressively goes to no. And I had to think about it. And then I thought what my friend said on social media, and I'm like, that's Emmett Till. Emmett Till was from Chicago, and he died. He was killed, I think it was 1955 or 56. It was around the time of the setting of this show. Mind blown. So they didn't shout out MLK. They didn't reference James Baldwin. They didn't reference Emmett Till. This episode is giving me everything at this point. So we had Bobo asked this question. He did not get a favorable answer, and we know how that turned out. Rest in peace, Emmett Till. And then another little boy, Gil, asked a question, and he's like, who are we talking to? And then the Ouija board starts spelling out the name George. And then Dee is like, what the hell? And it's like, we're not doing that. It's doing it on its own. And then it starts to mark out, it's dead. I said, oh, the shade. And so she flips over the board. She's pissed off. Dee leaves the basement. And then, so now we go to a shot of Hippolyta, who is upstairs. And she's just kind of looking for Dee, walking around the house. And so a door just randomly opens by itself. And instead of her walking away, because that's creepy, she walks into the room. And so on this table in the room, there's like this celestial type of figure. I'm not sure what it is, but she gets like glamored and mesmerized with it. Nothing really happens with it, but we know that it has some sort of importance at some point in the series. So then the next scene is of Tick walking in looking good in his military uniform, and he sees Lord, I want to call her Letitia so bad. I mean, that's her name. But he sees Leti dancing with this man. And so this other dude walks up and is like, hey, you know, I see you got your uniform on. You want these folks to know a soldier is in the house. That's a good idea. You always been smart. And then the guy is like, you know, is Leti your girl? Because, you know, me and Leti used to tussle back in the day, lying on his dick. And, you know, I'm trying to give her another chance. Unless that's your girl, then I'm going to back off. And so Tick don't really say nothing about it. And then the dude was like, well, if that's your girl, you know, you might want to go ahead and say something. Because she was like grinding all up on this dude. And I'm like, man, why don't you mind the business that pays you? And I'm sure being in Tick and Leti business ain't paying you a red cent. So go on, get lying on your schlong. So then we have Tick that's like staring at Leti dance with this guy. It's kind of like a mixture of jealousy and lust, which can be sexy, but also kind of scary. So then Leti goes to the bathroom because she's hot. And, you know, she's having her good time dancing. And so she bends down to wash her face. And in this scene, another thing happens that freaks me the hell out. She bends down to wash her face. And then there's a figure in the mirror behind her. Freaks me out. I always feel like whenever I'm washing my face, I'm going to pop up and something's going to be behind me. Call me crazy. Mind your business. But then she looks up and then the ghostly figure is gone. But then Tick is standing in the doorway. And so she sees him. And I think he's going to come in and like confront her about dancing with the dude. And no. They get to kissing, making out. He slammed her up on the bathroom vanity and he pulled that thing out and they get to banging, honey. Don't pull the thing out unless you plan to bang, okay? And so they did that, couple pumps and we done. And so Leti is looking like she doesn't have like a sexual afterglow bliss. It's something else going on. So when Tick reaches down to his pants, kind of pull himself up, he sees some blood on his fingers. And Leti's like, oh, I didn't know my menstrual started. And immediately I said, Leti was a virgin. Because a woman knows when she on her period. We know when we about to start our period. And we know we ain't about to have nobody up between our legs unless you into that when we on our period. So that was my first thought. I said, Leti is a virgin. I think because Leti is so carefree and fearless and brave and strong and dresses very, you know, has a sex appeal about herself, that could have been misconstrued that she was also promiscuous, which was not the case. And so she apologizes to Tick about the blood and he's like, it's okay, don't worry about it. And then so she basically asks him to leave the bathroom. She's like, I'll see you downstairs. So he leaves and then she cries. And I'm like, boo, oh, I felt so bad for her, because who wants to lose their virginity on a nasty ass bathroom sink? Leti didn't, and I don't blame her. So Leti goes downstairs and then they're talking. She's at a card table and they're talking, and all of a sudden they see like a flicker in the background. The first thing I said is, these motherfuckers burned a cross in her yard. Sure enough, they go to the window and a cross is burned in the yard. And so Hippolyta's like, where are the kids? Find the kids. And so Leti is pissed. She's like, enough is enough. So she grabs a baseball bat. She goes out front. And then a song from one of the Clark sisters, I can't remember her name, I think Dorinda Clark, starts playing. But I heard, hold up, they don't love you like I love you. Slow down. She had that, because look, Leti had this fly ass dress on, a baseball bat, and she was busting up cars. And I immediately thought of Beyonce. It could have been just me, but that's what I thought of. But Leti goes, she is enraged, she busts up these cars. And what I love about this scene was not only that how fly she looked and how strong she looked, and she was tearing up them cars in front of them white folks and did not care. Also, I appreciate the fact that nobody stopped her. Nobody ran down there and said, no, Leti, we can't do this. Hell no. You know what they did? Tick said, hey, Ruby, go get such and such car, bring it around. Because the police was going to come, and if they found guns and shit, it was going to be bad. Once they heard them sirens, Leti did what she had to do with some cars. She knocked them bricks out of place so them horns would start blaring. Ruby came around. They threw that bat and guns. They had shotguns. They threw them in the trunk of that car, and baby girl dipped out. Leti put on somebody's coat because she knew she was probably going to go to jail. And they got on their hands, got on their knees, put them hands up. And sis was like, it is what it is. And I appreciated everything about that scene. So in the next scene, Leti's in the back of the police car. And so the police officer, I knew they was gonna do some fucked up shit to her. And so he's like, Letitia, I forget her last name. Was it Cunningham? I may have made that up. Told you to buy the Winthrop house, and she ain't say nothing. And he was like, we've gotten a lot of complaints about you since she moved in. And she was like, well, did you get any of the 21 complaints that I filed against my neighbors for harassment? And so he's like, hey, Cap, did we get any reports? And then his partners were like, nope, we didn't get anything. Of course they're gonna say that. And so he's still trying to find out how she got the money to buy the house, who told her to buy the house. And so he starts holding on to like the rope or whatever to brace himself. And I knew exactly what he was gonna start doing. So they started moving the truck. So Leti starts getting like slung all around the back of the car. So she's like getting hurt and bleeding and stuff. And I immediately thought of Freddie Gray, rest in peace. Freddie Gray was the young black man that died in police custody. Once they took him to the hospital, he mysteriously had broken bones. I think his spinal cord was broken, things like that. And he died from his injuries. I wonder how. That's probably what happened to him too. Rest in peace. So I don't know if that was an intentional reference, but that's kind of what I took from it. But from that incident, Leti found out that 8 bodies of black people were found in the house. And the man that owned the house before her his name was Horatio Epstein. I know his last name was Epstein. And basically they didn't want her in that house. So then the next scene, Leti is back in her creepy ass basement in the dark room. And so she sees that there's these strange markings all over the pictures that she has developing. So she pulls the pictures down, and then she starts trying to put all the markings together so it can make something that makes sense. And it makes a face. And so the face starts to come out of the ground in this awful ass CG. And it's like, get out of my house. And of course it scares the shit out of her. And she takes out running, which she should. And then so the next scene is everybody packing up to leave because a lot of the residents of her house feel away because she done basically caused all this ruckus in the neighborhood. So now they're afraid for their life. And so Leti is trying to figure out what the hell is happening. She's gathering up pictures. She's trying to figure out why is her house haunted? What is going on? And so Ruby is like, well, we don't have the money to pay for this house, if all these people move out. And Leti lets it slip that she got the money to pay for the house from an inheritance from her mom. So Ruby didn't know nothing about this inheritance. Leti didn't share anything of this inheritance with their brother or with Ruby. So Ruby is pissed off. She feels like Leti is selfish, and she feels like Leti used her. She was trying to make it seem like she wanted to have a relationship with her, but really she was just a fucked up person, and she's all about self. And so Ruby leaves the house. So the next scene is Hippolyta talking to Montrose about her suspicions about George's death. And this scene was pretty, not a whole lot, just a lot of repetitive stuff about Hippolyta and her suspicions. But one thing I wanted to note in this scene was that if you notice at the height of the scene, like right when the scene is about to end, the music kind of gets this crescendo. It's a figure that moves like super fast in the background. Let me know in the comments below if you caught that, because I actually had to run it back. And I was like, did I just see that? And it really did happen. And I'm like, well, maybe everybody in the background was moving fast to begin with, but no. So I don't know what that's supposed to represent. Like, I don't know, y'all. It's just too much in this episode. Okay, let's go. We don't want to be an hour long. I won't be. So the next scene is Leti at this bar, and she has like paper scattered all about on the table, and she has all these notes everywhere, pictures everywhere, and Tick walks in and he's like, what's going on? And so she's looking disheveled, and she just comes out. She's like, my house is haunted. And considering all the stuff that they've been through, all the things they witnessed, Tick does not question it at all. And he's like, well, shit, what the hell you got? What's going on? And so Leti pretty much explains that the owner of the house, she reached out to Jerome Jackson. That's Michael's brother. Jerome Jackson who was the black man who sold her the Winthrop house. And she met up with him and she demanded to know who owned the house before her. And so she found out that the original owner of the house was a man whose last name was Winthrop. And then after him, the house was purchased by the man Epstein that the officer Lancaster was telling her about in the back of the police car. Basically, Epstein was removed from the University of Chicago because he was performing experiments that were unethical. They didn't really go into detail, but you could probably assume that he was experimenting on humans. And so Leti is kind of putting two and two together that this must be the person that's haunting her house, and the missing people or the ghosts that might be in the house are probably the bodies of the people who were missing from the south side of Chicago around that time. And so the next scene, Leti has called a voodoo priestess, and she comes to the house. She has a goat. I saw that goat. I said, oh baby, it's about to get real. So sure enough, this voodoo priestess, she cuts the throat of the goat. So she sacrifices the goat. She gets the goat's blood, and she says, you know, if the ghosts in this house or the spirits in this house are malevolent as you say, then we're gonna need to protect ourselves. So she puts the goat's blood on the threshold of the door, and then she puts a cross on her forehead, Leti's, and Tick's. So they go into the basement and they start like this ritual. And so they start chanting and she starts praying, and then like all the wind starts kicking up around them. And so while they're in the basement trying to exorcise the demons, the three ignorant ass white boys from earlier in the episode bust into the house with the baseball bats, I guess ready to get revenge on Leti for busting up their cars, which they deserve. So they walking through the house, and so they are basically attacked by the ghosts that inhabit the house. So one of the ghosts is so sad. These ghosts are really sad to me, y'all, and they were more sad than scary. So one of the ghosts that attacks them is this big man that has the body of like a huge, tall basketball player, but then the head of a baby. And so we know that the ghosts are in the form that they were when they died. So it really made me sad to know that this man was tortured and his body was mutilated in such that his head was removed and was replaced with the head of a baby. So a baby was also, y'all don't want to take it there, but it was just really sad. Anyway, so the baby scares two of the guys, and so they run into one of the rooms, and then the furnace, like the boiler, cuts on like high speed and like basically like burns them to death. And then so one of the other ones, he's walking through, I think the kitchen or somewhere, and then one of the doors for the elevator shaft opens, and then he goes and sticks his head in. Then the elevator comes up, knocks his head off, and it's the coolest graphics of like the pulsation of like where his stub is and the blood. I just thought it was really cool. It was gory, but it was cool. So Leti and Tick and the voodoo priestess don't have to worry about them three because the ancestors already took care of their asses, okay? And so while they're in the basement doing this ritual to try to exorcise the demons from the house, everything settles. And so they feel like it worked. And then all of a sudden the water pipes bust, and so water starts splashing all over them. And then Leti realizes like, oh shit, this is wiping the blood off of us. So they're like, our marks, let's go. So they try to run out the secret room under the basement, but the little door hatch is locked. And so the voodoo priestess gets snatched back into the room, and then she gets possessed by the demon of the original owner of the house. And so it kind of is a tie back to this idea of the episode being called the Holy Ghost, because the Holy Ghost is this idea that the Holy Spirit gets into your body and moves you and you start to feel the spirit. Well, this is kind of like the negative side of that, where this lady has a spirit enter into her body and possess her. And so she attacks Leti, and then she like knocks her out, and then she like chokes Tick against the wall. And then in that connection, that evil spirit goes from the priestess, and she passes out, and it goes into Tick. So while Tick is possessed, he's like twitching, he's hitting us with the thriller moves, and his head is going back and forth between Epstein and him, and he's like, bitch, get out of my house. And he's freaking out, and Leti is like calling out the names of the people that died in the house. And so all of these spirits come around, and I loved it, y'all. It almost made me cry, because I really feel like the ancestors really be having our backs. And the ancestors ain't gotta be people blood related to you. The ancestors are those who paved the way before us. And the fact that they were never there to hurt her, but they were always there to protect her. And they knew that she had to strengthen her to help them be released from this hell they were in was so powerful to me. So she joined with the ancestors and they all started to chant this Creole chant, and it essentially destroyed the ghost of Epstein. And so the next scene is Leti. Her house is renewed, it's cleansed, and it doesn't look as dark. She looks beautiful in the dress she has on. There's a reporter from the newspaper there just talking to her about the great things she's doing in the community in her house. And then the lady asks her, you know, what happened? Do you know anything about these 3 white men that are missing from your neighborhood? And Leti's like, I don't know nothing about that. It ain't my business. No, she was like, I didn't know anybody was missing. And so the lady took Leti's picture, and then they move on. And then so the elevator goes down by itself, which was creepy. And then so as it's going down, there's like these symbols that are highlighted. It's almost like, looks like little human forms with like X's through them. And then so it goes all the way down to like the secret tunnel underneath Leti's house. And in that secret tunnel, we see the 3 bodies of the white boys down there, and then a bunch of skeletons underneath. So you're like, okay, what the hell been going on here? So I have a feeling we'll revisit that at some point in the series. And then so the final scene is Tick. He goes to the office of Jerome Jackson, and he's just trying to figure out what's happening. So when he gets there, he sees Christina's fly ass car pull up, and then he kind of puts 2 and 2 together. So we go into the real estate office, and basically Christina is like, we wired you that money. Thank you for doing what I need you to do, Jerome. And so Tick walks in, and not Leti, but Christina excuses Jerome. And so Tick figures it out. He's like, so you must have been the one that gave Leti that money. And so Christina's pretty much like, you know, I needed to get into this house. Winthrop was one of the original founders of the Sons of Adam, and he turned against them, and he stole pages out of the book of names, and he tried to decipher the language of Adam, and so he was disbanded from the Brotherhood. And so now we can't find those pages, and if we can find those missing pages, then I can decipher the entire book. And basically she wants to get all this infinite power. And so Tick threatens to shoot her. And so while he has his arm extended with the gun, she basically puts him in a trance so he can't move. And so she basically tells him that Epstein was a follower of Winthrop, and he might know where the pages are. You know, they may have been in his house. So that's basically why she guided Leti to buy the house. And so she was like, you know, we need to find those pages, and, you know, give me a call when you're ready to find out the truth of your birthright. And then so she finally takes him out of his trance, and before she leaves, she says, and you have to be smarter than this. You know, you can't be going around killing white women. And I said, this bitch is right and she wrong altogether. Because when she said that, I said, bitch, you ain't lying. This brother can't kill you no matter what. So her superpower is not only that she can cast spells, but the fact that she's a white woman and she's untouchable, basically. So yeah, y'all, that was the end of the episode. Such a bomb ass episode. I loved all the Easter eggs in it. I'm sure there are more Easter eggs from the LoveCraft actual book. Yeah, so let me know in the comments below. First of all, what other Easter eggs did you see that I missed? Mention it respectfully, because some of y'all be out of pocket in these comments and I just block you. Keep it real. But let me know in the comments below. What are some things that pointed out to you? How you felt about this episode? This is definitely my #1 episode so far. There's 10 in this season, so that could change. But right now, episode 3 is #1 for me. So let me know how you felt about this episode. And as always, like this video, share this video, subscribe to my channel, and I'm gonna see y'all next time for something else. Thank you so much for your support. And there is a podcast that goes along with this this show. I didn't know if y'all knew that. I listened to the podcast for this episode and it was super interesting, super entertaining. I will be listening to it every week. So I would suggest you guys do the same thing if you are into this show. So thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna see y'all next time for something else. Holla.